Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Catherine O'Keefe. Catherine initially worked in investment banking, but once she met perimenopause, she was then inspired to create the Menopause Success Summit and set up Wellness Warrior. She is determined to shatter the menopause taboo and is doing precisely that. This is one of the most important episodes yet, I believe. Whether you are going through perimenopause, whether you are postmenopausal, or you know someone who is going through it. The information that Catherine shares and her general overall attitude is key to how we all manage this well going forwards. She talks sense, real sense about symptom management, as well as the broader picture of respecting one another's freedom of choice. And yes, we even discuss the recent NICE report on CBT and HRT. We dare to go there. Another subject that comes up is therapy. Yes, there is CBT, but there is also one-on-one therapy. And we both agree that it can have a significantly positive impact on midlife. Naming what is troubling you, having someone help you see it for what it is, can change the way you feel completely. And that is why I am offering you real menopause therapy. And for now, subscription is free. Sign up and enjoy half an hour for free as well. You get to handpick your therapist on health concerns, expertise, your work environment, and even personal interests. So you find someone who really understands you. No obligation, no tie-in, just therapy that fits into your schedule and can bring you back to feeling like your true self. Go to bit.ly/RM therapy. That's bit.ly/RM therapy, capital R, capital M, capital T. I'll put a clickable link in the show notes so it's super easy. And now the moment you've been waiting for, Catherine O'Keefe. Catherine, it is a joy to meet you. Thank you very much for joining me today. Would you like to start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself, your background, maybe where you grew up, so people get an idea of who you are?
Yeah, thanks, Hattie, and lovely to be on with you. So yes, I am based in Ireland, and I didn't spend all of my life here though. When I finished college, I actually went and I lived in London for about 9 years, and then I had an adventurous spirit, shall we say. So I took myself off and I travelled around the world for about a year and a half, which was absolutely fantastic. And then, I had a career before my current career. I had a career in investment banking. I was a director with Bank of America Merrill Lynch for over 20 years before I kind of moved into the new chapter in my life. So I guess I've had, I like to think I've lived a great life so far, and I've always, I guess, been open to learning is a huge passion of mine. And it was my own experience through perimenopause, which really brought me to the work that I'm doing now, because when I started perimenopause back in 2013, nobody was talking about it, or there was very little talk about it in Ireland at the time, and certainly internationally as well, although the UK were leading the conversation. And really, particularly in the work that I was doing, the finance world just wasn't on the table at all. So I think that really kind of drove my passion just to bring awareness so that people understood what's happening. And, I do talk about, I did a TEDx a couple of years ago, and I talk a lot there about what happened to me and some of the experiences I had. And I guess one of the biggest ones for me was, like we know, one of the heavy hitters for women is brain fog. And I found in investment banking, that's an environment where you really have to be firing on all cylinders at all times. And I just found that, I was definitely struggling with brain fog, with the memory, concentration and so forth. And, it was symptoms like that and, heavy periods that I guess just took a toll on me. And it was only as I started to research and learn more that I realized, hey, this is normal. you know.
Well, 2013, the financial business industry, oh dear, see, brain fog. 2013, the finance industry was very much still a male-dominated area.
Yeah.
And lots of us who have gravitated towards working in the manosphere used to work in male-dominated industries and businesses as well. What was your first encounter with perimenopause like? I know you do talk about it in your TEDx talk, but if you're able to share a little bit of that experience here, that would be wonderful. And how did you realize it was perimenopause?
I definitely got several knocks on the door, you know, to kind of say, look, I'm here, don't ignore me. But I think, look, I was 43, 44, and I was kind of thinking, I'm too young. Menopause happens when you're like 50, 60, and it's all about hot flushes. So I wasn't really expecting the brain fog, the heavy periods. I wasn't expecting that part of it. But I guess one of the most kind of obvious incidences for me was I was away with a group of friends. We went to Copenhagen for the Christmas markets, and I had a little bit of spotting a couple of days before. But we were sitting in a restaurant on our first night, the Friday night, and I just wasn't feeling right in my nether regions. And literally, as I sat there, I think probably just after we had a starter, I flooded out. My period came on in seconds. I destroyed my trousers. I destroyed the seat. I left the restaurant with a jacket around my waist. It was November. It was Baltic. And I think that was the real, okay, you've really got to listen now to what's going on here. And I did. I came home. I had scans done. There was nothing wrong with me. Nothing wrong with me. But, you know, I was throwing off a lot of symptoms that were perimenopause symptoms. So I had the heavy periods, I had the brain fog, I had the anxiety, which I'd never had before. I would have, you know, at that stage, I had 3 kids, and yes, you worry about your kids and all of that, but I had nothing like the anxiety that came with perimenopause. And I think for me, that was a real kind of, it was a shock in a way, because I was kind of like, what's this about? Because I don't experience anxiety, but I really started to. And I started to notice that I was constantly going around with low grade anxiety in my tummy, and I just wasn't feeling settled. So I think those few things coming together, I knew there was something not right. And I just knew that, you know, I just wasn't myself. Mm-hmm. And that really kind of prompted me to just really understand what was happening for me. And once I did that I found that a huge relief, because I then kind of realized this is normal. You know, I'm not going mad. You know, I'm not different. This is an inevitable stage of life. And I found that a huge relief, because then I realized, okay, I know what's happening. It's normal. I'm okay. Now let's start to deal with it. And what can I do to support myself? Which is where I'm a really practical person. And that's where I just got really practical about everything. I just really started to understand, okay, what can I do to resolve the heavy periods? What can I do to support myself through anxious moments? What can I do for brain fog? What can I do for energy, the exhaustion, the tiredness? So I started to bring all of that together and support myself. And as I was doing that, I started blogging about it and writing articles and so forth. And then it was like Pandora's box. It was like people saying, okay, tell me more and whatever. And so it kind of all stemmed from there. And in 2014, I left investment banking, and I took some time out with my kids. And then I was blogging, I was doing all of that. And then basically I started working with women, and then working with workplaces around the awareness around menopause. And I guess in Ireland at the time, not a lot was happening. But in 2019, then the Irish government, through the Department of Health, set up the Women's Task Force. And that's where I became a stakeholder on that. And I was basically really, you know, pushing for more awareness, as were many other people, around women's health with a focus on menopause. So I've kind of seen the wave building from, 2016, 2017 to kind of the crescendo that we've had over the last couple of years. But, I like to think in Ireland, we're definitely being a very progressive part of the conversation now globally. And I find, I've worked with over 350 workplaces in Ireland and internationally at this stage, so it's great to be part of that momentum and to see that we're supporting women going through menopause at work.
It's so critical, and there seems to be a lot of information out there at the moment. Certainly the symptoms that you've mentioned, the brain fog, the flooding, the anxiety, I come across time and time and time again, particularly in the workplace, and go through it myself as well. So women need common sense and practical advice to help them through this time. So I've got two questions. First of all, what do you do to support the women who come to you or who you work with in workplaces? And secondly, it's great that there is progress, but we're not making linear positive progress. I feel it's a bit of a mess. So first of all, your practical solutions, and then what are we doing?
Yeah, let's definitely talk about that one. I think, look, when I talk in workplaces, I very much talk about, my number one part is the individual nature of menopause. And everyone will have a different experience, everyone will have different symptoms, and it's very much looking at just not bombarding yourself. So taking it symptom by symptom. So, what is your most challenging symptom right now? If that is, let's say, for example, it's brain fog. Well, okay, what are the practical things that you can do now to support brain fog? And I think if you take it symptom by symptom, it takes out the overwhelm. Because if you try, if maybe you have 5 symptoms, maybe 10, if you try and resolve them all in the one go, that's overwhelming. So just symptom by symptom. And then I think it's really understanding what are your management options. So that's where you can make an empowered, informed choice. So that means understanding what are your medical management options, understanding HRT, understanding non-hormonal medications, if that might apply to you. And then understanding also what are the complementary therapies and aspects that might come into play. And that allows you then to decide, okay, depending on the severity of my symptoms, are they mild, moderate, or severe? Then I can look at how I support myself. I very much believe if your symptoms are mild, then let's talk about lifestyle. Let's talk about the practical things you can do in your life. If they're moderate or severe, then that's a different conversation where you really want to investigate those medical management options or maybe those complementary therapies that might support. So being able to make an informed choice is crucial in my book. But on top of that is making a respectful, informed choice. And why I say the word respectful, and this comes to your second question, is that menopause is individual. Menopause isn't new. Menopause has been around. Aristotle, I did a video on this the other day. Aristotle, the Chinese, the Greeks, they all talked about menopause. It's not something new. It's not a deficiency disease. It's an inevitable stage of life that all women will go through. Not all women will have symptoms. Majority will, but not all women will have them, as we know. So I think what's hugely important in this conversation is that we respect the individual experience of menopause, and that also, Hattie, that also brings in respecting the individual's freedom of choice, their freedom to select what management option works best for them. This is something that I have seen for so many years, that there are polarized camps that you must do this, you must do that. And as humans, we love to help, right? So you want to feel that, okay, listen, this worked for me, it'll work for you. But that's not the case. Just because it worked for me doesn't mean it will work for you. And that's where I believe the clarity of information is so important, because if I understand what HRT can do. I understand what acupuncture can do. I understand what my lifestyle, my good food, my sleep, my movement, what all of that can do. Then I am in a very good position to make an informed choice and build my own personal menopause support kit. But, I could say what works for me, it won't work for my best friend. It won't work for my sister. So that individual nature has got to be kept upmost, I think, of the conversation. And I think, look, as you mentioned, my God, there's so much overwhelm around menopause. I mean, you go onto social media, there's different information coming from many different voices. And how do you differentiate what's right, what's accurate? And I think we've got to be very, very careful there, because social media is amazing to transmit information. Unfortunately, it's not so amazing in transmitting incorrect information. So I always kind of say to people, look, find your trusted resources and then stick to them, because you know what you can trust. And that's really important, because when you're going through, let's be honest, you're going through menopause and you've got brain fog, you've anxiety, then the last thing you need is more overwhelm. So, I think keeping it clear, keeping it accurate, sticking to evidence-based information and not sticking to hypothetically what people might think or people might experience when we don't have the clinical evidence behind it, that's dangerous.
I agree completely. And I think, again, social media is fantastic. It has a wonderful role to play in this. Equally, it is filled with potholes. And certainly recently here, I'm sure you have had the impact of it being part of the UK, the discussion about CBT being mentioned by the NICE guidelines. And it appears that half of social media is, we can't have CBT because it won't help with our hot flashes, and we only need HRT. And it just looks at a tiny portion, whereas both have a place, in my opinion. Both have different roles as options. Who knows how it's going to be offered in practical terms? That's a whole different conversation. But HRT is vital for some women, for many women. CBT also can help enormously in different ways. Will it help with a dry vagina? Not directly. No. Will it help with your perception and acceptance of the changes you're going through? It might well do. How is all of this over in Ireland?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the same. And I think you've made some really good analogies there. And I think what we've got to look at is everything has a place. Like if we take CBT as an example, cognitive behavioral therapy, it's a very practical form of therapy. So we know that it can help many women with hot flushes, with night sweats, with anxiety. Is it going to help the woman who is maybe having a recurrence or has maybe some residual past trauma that they need to work through? No, I don't think so. And I'll give you my own experience of that. So my dad died when I was very young, very, very suddenly. He was 21. And I was in college at the time. I was given free grief counselling at the time, and I did it the best thing I ever did. And I really felt that, obviously grief never goes. It's with you always, but in different guises. And I really felt I worked through it. It was painful, but I did the work. What I wasn't prepared for was, as I went through perimenopause, the grief of losing my dad, who I was so close with, came back really viscerally. Now, CBT was never going to help me process that grief and the final bits of that residual grief that I had to move through and to be okay with it. But what did really help me was one-to-one individual counselling, which worked for me. And it was an absolute game changer. So I went back and I did that as I went through perimenopause and as it came up for me. So I think we've got to realize that everything has a place, but it has to be where it fits into your life. And you're right. I can't see any justification for CBT helping with vaginal dryness, that I just, but there are other aspects that it can definitely help with. But there's no magic bullet to menopause. There just isn't, because of the individual nature of the experience. I think it's kind of trying to understand that with all the research that's happening, which is fantastic, it's trying to understand what are the tools we can all bring together to support ourselves. And that's where, look, you as you mentioned, that's where we see the polarizing views that happen in social media. And that's where I believe we've got to be so respectful of each other in this, because let's take, for example, if you have a woman who cannot take HRT, if it is 100% contraindicated for many medical reasons that may exist, if that is the case, then CBT may be a very practical support for some of her symptoms. May also be that non-hormonal medications like antidepressants may be very supportive for some of the vasomotor symptoms for that person where HRT is contraindicated. So I think it's just that respect piece. I mean, oh my Lord, I just believe so passionately around that one, because it really does make me, Amanda Peeves laughs with me about this, because she said, "Oh, I know when you're angry," because that is one thing that really makes my blood boil, when we're not being respectful of each other. Because I've sat in my early conversations where I did talks around Ireland, I've sat in rooms where women have said everyone should be on HRT. I remember sitting in one room, there was over 100 women there, and I remember one woman crying because she could not take HRT because of her medical history. And it was right, she couldn't take HRT. But it's, so we've got to understand that everyone's on a different journey.
Respect is absolutely key. And I think we lose that. We lose kindness and humanity and end up pitting each other against one another because of dogged beliefs of half the story. How did you handle that situation?
I just very much exactly what I'm saying here. I was very much saying in the room, we've got to be so respectful of each other. And I will say, I remember that evening. I remember how humbling it was. And I definitely remember the person who made the comment. They definitely will have left that room rethinking what they said. And that's not a bad thing, because it just means if there was 100 people in the room, if 2 people, had different experiences and could not take HRT, it was definitely more than 2, but I'm just giving it as an experience. At least maybe you think people will think differently, and people will understand that we can't, there's no black and white answer. There's no black and white answer to supporting yourself through menopause. It's individual, and not only are you taking your management options into account, you have to take your personal beliefs into account, your personal choice, what your life to date, what your experiences have been, and maybe, your own thoughts about things. So there's so many ingredients in the mix. And I think that's where that respect piece is so, so important.
What inspired you originally to set up Wellness Warrior and to write your book, Everything You Need to Know About Menopause?
I think, a lot of what we discussed, my own journey, for one, lack of clarity, definitely number 2. And as anyone who's read the book will say, it's very clear and it's very practical. And that's what I'm all about. And I think for me, it was literally, okay, let's just draw the line. Let's just do a line in the sand. Let's just name what this is, name the symptoms, talk about all of them. Lack of libido, dry vaginas, etc., constipation. Let's talk about it all. But at the same time, let's outline what are the practical things you can do every day to support yourself. And here are your options. So now I'm giving you the information. Now you can make an informed choice that works for you. And at the same time, what I also did, because I get a lot of comments on this one, Hattie, is I wrote a chapter for your partner. So whether you're in a same-sex relationship, heterosexual, you can hand the book over to your partner, they can read this one chapter in particular, and then basically, it will allow them to have a better insight into menopause. Because another important part of menopause, I believe, is that menopause isn't just about the person going through it, it's all the touch points in that person's life. So if we think about it, I'm going through menopause, but that impacts my work colleagues, it impacts everyone I work with, it impacts my friends, my family, my partner, my sons, etc. So it's all the touch points in a person's life. And I think that's an important part of menopause that we can't ignore, because it's really challenging for people at home. If you are having a tough menopause, that's really challenging. So how do we support your kids? How do we support your partner, your friends, etc.? So, the book is very much all around that, and a labour of love it was.
In the workplace, what do you get asked the most by the people who aren't in perimenopause to postmenopause? So the touch points around them.
Yeah, I think number one is, how can I help? How can I support my colleagues or my partner? That's number one. Every single talk that I've done hundreds. The number one that I always get from people who aren't going through it is like, oh my, I never knew there was so many symptoms. Mm-hmm. And particularly I find people don't realize the depth of the psychological symptoms of menopause, the anxiety, the insomnia, the low moods, the rage, the frustration, the exhaustion, the tiredness. I think, many people would say, that they really didn't have insight into. But I think in all instances, it's very much, what can we do? How can we help? What are the steps that we can do to, support our colleagues? And I love that, because, really at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. We're in it together. You and I are in it together. We're going through. I'm still in perimenopause. I haven't hit menopause yet.
I'm waiting.
Yeah. So we're all in it together. And I think it's understanding how we support each other as we go through it. Like menopause, It's not quick. There's years in the process. So it's very much, looking at the practical things that we can do to support each other.
I think people are often surprised as well, if they're not going through it, how long it can last.
Yeah, for sure.
That has a big impact.
Yeah. And I think the other part that I would find a lot of people are surprised at are the different forms of menopause. And here in Ireland, you're familiar with the Daisy charity? Yes. Are you, the Daisy Network? So I'm the Irish representative for the Daisy charity, which works with young girls with POI, premature ovarian insufficiency. And unfortunately, we know the instances are increasing, and that is definitely something that a lot of people are not aware of. In October, I held my 4th Menopause Success Summit, and one of the girls from our POI group, she started menopause when she was 12, Isabel, and she came up on stage and she shared her story. And she's 25 now, and she was saying, I didn't expect at the age of 25 to be sitting in a room talking about menopause. And I think that's certainly an area, again, that many people, they maybe are just thinking about natural, spontaneous menopause and maybe aren't aware that there's different forms of menopause.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I think that all deserves a lot more attention.
Totally, 100%. Yeah.
What is the greatest lesson that menopause is teaching you at the moment?
Oh my Lord, at the moment, that's a great question. I would probably say, and this might sound cliche, but it's kindness. And I'm going to try because I don't want this to be light. And my dad always kind of reared us on be kind, always be kind. But I think it's not about, I'm not talking here about kindness to other people, kindness to yourself, and kindness and compassion to yourself in terms of just understanding that this is a chapter in your life that you have to go through. And I think it's so important to give yourself a break and to just be kind to yourself as you're going through it. It's like, and I do carve out those moments of, how can I be nice to myself? I work hard. I'm passionate about what I do. I love my work, absolutely love it. But I have to replenish the energy in my tank too. And that is the kindness aspect of being kind to myself. So I think it's just, looking at, what are those nice little things that you can do for yourself? Mm-hmm. And it's okay to do that. I'm continuously learning that, and I'm continuously having reminders of that, because even I was working on my newsletter for this week, and I'm talking about energy, and it's very much about we keep going. We and particularly when you love your job, you just keep going with it. But I have to stand back, and I've got to realize, okay, I do need a little rest here, and I need to be kind to myself now, and I need to kind of give myself, just look after myself. And, I am very good in terms of my lifestyle. I carve out my exercise time, all that type of thing. But I think sometimes it's just carving out the time to do nothing, Hattie.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
To just put your legs up and just do nothing. To maybe stare at the wall and just, I don't know, think into the abyss or something. Or just, read a really good book, and just, it's okay to do nothing. There's so many aspects of being kind to yourself and ways of being kind to yourself. But I think that kindness and compassion to ourselves is really important.
Oh, I think so. And some alone time, if that's what helps you, is so important.
Yeah. So I'm coming in now to my quieter period at work where, I can be pretty much guaranteed I will get my meditation in the morning. I will, be able to sit and enjoy a coffee as opposed to gulping it back. And I think when you're busy, we can forget to just stop. But I think when we do stop, it's really stopping.
Finally then, Catherine, where can people find you?
Well, I'm wellnesswarrior.ie is my website. I'm very active on Instagram. You'll find me there again under Wellness Warrior, and my website. You can sign up to my newsletter. And as you kindly mentioned, my book, All You Need to Know About Menopause, is available on Amazon or all good bookstores. So or I'm on LinkedIn as well. So many platforms.
Thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much for having me on.
I will put all the details of where to find Catherine in the show notes. And a final note on Real Menopause Therapy. Subscription is still free and sign up is obligation free as well. Sign up and just have a look around to see how it all works, see who's there. We've got such a ton of really good, very highly qualified therapists to choose from, and they are all waiting to help you. Go to bit.ly/RM therapy. That's bit.ly/RM therapy. Capital R, capital M, capital T. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.